Yo YouTube! This is a video for yesterday, which was Thursday the 15th of February. It's going to be quite light. I'm going to go through some nice countryside today, so not a motorway, which is what I usually am on. I do these videos. So hopefully a slightly more interesting view out of the front of the window than usual. Yesterday's work was quite tough going, I must say. I tend to start each day quite optimistic, and it takes a while before that optimism is ground out of me, but some days it is. And I think yesterday, by the end of the day, I probably felt like I'd had enough of, not the job completely, but just of that day. I was glad to finish yesterday in the end. I want to start off by talking a bit about a job I didn't get in the morning yesterday. And it's an indication, I think, of some poor practice, but I suppose it's a capitalistic approach to the job, and that's what I'm saying it's about. Anyway, it was a national shipper, and they had a job going from Spalding to Skelmersdale, which is a nice little run of 169 miles. And it was for a small van, and I was not very far from it. I happened to be at the hospital having a blood test in the morning yesterday. And so when I finished, I had a look on this feed, and I was only about 5 minutes away from the pickup. So when I say about 5 minutes, it was 5 minutes by Google Maps. I was really close. If you don't do this job regularly, then 5 minutes is like basically sitting on top of the job, and you're probably the closest person to the job, particularly in a quieter area. Anyway, I put a bid on initially of 165, but then I quickly thought about it. I thought, no, that's a good job for me. I'll do it for 160. So I had a bid of 160 for 169 miles, small van, and I was 5 minutes from the pickup in quite a quiet area. And there wasn't a lot of drivers around. It was a pickup at 8:55, and I put the bid on at something like 8:10. And that job sat there for 10 minutes, and I did what I thought was the wisest thing to do, which was to call the shipper. And I won't go through the whole conversation because it was quite short, but the impression that I was given off the back of that was, don't call us, we'll give it to whoever we want to when we feel like it. So I didn't feel, let's put it this way, I didn't feel it was a welcome call. But I didn't feel that I'd done anything to upset them, other than making the call maybe was something that was what they didn't want. But I wasn't I was quite, I thought, polite, and just asked a couple of questions, and then that was it. Went off went. Anyway, that sat there until all the time until 9 o'clock. And I was looking for other jobs at the same time, and I was sitting around. I even went as far as driving using the map as a guide on CX to as close as I could get to it that I could think of, and I was within a minute of the pickup by about 8:30, and I sat there looking for other jobs, and in the end that job got cancelled. So this is my reflections upon that. From my perspective, I've got really good feedback. I was really close to that job. I'd given it a fair price, and I'm a really good quality driver. And yet all of those factors didn't seem to matter for this particular shipper. They would rather not do the job at the price that I said. And that price, I'm going to work it out pence per loaded mile. 160 divided by 169 is 95 pence per loaded mile. So I'm not saying that is a cheap price. It's not a cheap price, but it is definitely, I think, a fair price to get a same day load delivered from somewhere like Spalding to Skelmersdale. And let's say, for the sake of argument, we go to 80p a mile for that job times 80p. That's at £135. So I was £25 less than maybe what they were looking for. £25 more than what they were looking for. For the sake of £25, they didn't bother calling me. They basically, I think one of three things has happened. I think they either just told the customer they couldn't do it, which I think is bad practice, got one of their own drivers to do it, which I think is possible, or the customer refused to pay because it was they were being charged too much. But I bet the customer would pay £25 less than they were charging. So anyway, I don't know what's going to happen with that. It's just an indication that some companies, some shippers, maybe, to be fair, maybe most shippers, most people, maybe not shippers, maybe most people just focus on being cheap, or as cheap as possible. And I just don't believe that's the right way to do a same-day delivery service, both from the shipper's point of view and the driver's point of view. I will remember that shipper's name, because it's quite it's memorable, and I will bear in mind in the future what happens between me and them as of jobs and prices. I suspect we're just not operating in the same market, me and them. I think that I would probably be looking to do a better quality service at a fair price, what I call a fair price, and they're just looking for the cheapest driver around at any particular time. And I think we don't necessarily overlap in what our values. Anyway, I went on a bit about that, but that's kind of just a little story that I experienced yesterday morning, and this was prior to me getting a job, which I did in the end get. But it took a while, to be fair. It wasn't until 10:30 that I won a job, so it was probably a good 2 hours that I was bidding. And it was a job from, I think it was, I'm trying to remember where it's from now. Oh, my memory is so bad. I'm thinking Sleaford, going to, oh, I should know this. I've got no idea. I did write it down, but I know it was a 51-mile journey, and it was going from Sleaford eastwards. So let's say it was Birmingham, somewhere in Birmingham, maybe. Oh, I don't know. That's really poor of me. Oh yeah, no, I remember. Sorry, I remember. It might have been Sleaford, I don't know, but it was going to Mansfield, so it wasn't very far. And I haven't been to Mansfield very often, and I thought it was a really good place to go to end up in Mansfield. So 16 miles to get to the pickup, 51 miles for the loading miles. I bid £60, and it was for a short wheelbase van. I remember it now. It was flowers. I was picking up flowers from a wholesaler's, taking it to Mansfield. So I arrived at the drop-off location at about 12:40. So a couple of hours after getting the job. So about 20 minutes to pick up, about an hour and a half to drop it off. And this comes to my second little story, as it were. It's not really a story, my second experience. So when I arrived, it was all a bit of a bit weird, because there was no one around, the goods in. And eventually I managed to get hold of somebody, and it was a guy that I'd spoken to when I first arrived, who said to go to the goods in to do this thing, to offload these flowers. But the guy that then eventually came back to me, he said, "Oh, this is for me actually," and he wasn't rude to me, but he kind of, I detected that he was frustrated, or he was irritated about something, and he was sort of he was telling me that this was a late order that was meant to have come in at 1 o'clock in the morning. He said it was late. I said, how long? When's it meant to be here? He said 1 o'clock. And then he said this was meant to be in a chilled van. And then I gave the classic response that we should all learn as courier drivers. It's taken me a while to get to this point. And I said, oh, I'm just the driver. And, oh, I'm just the driver. You should learn that phrase, because that's really gets you out a lot of problems. Or should do. So he took the load. You know, he realised it wasn't my fault. But I then rang the shipper and just let them know that he wasn't particularly happy because he's fitting a chilled van and it was late. Just so they knew. I said that he accepted it fine, but just to communicate to the shipper. Oh, so the shipper in this case was actually the company that I'd picked up from. So it was like a wholesaler shipping their own goods. So I think what must have happened is they must have had a delivery last night that wasn't fully fulfilled, and then this morning, yesterday morning, excuse me, must have just finished the order with a CX job. But they didn't put on a chilled van, which I suppose the customer would have definitely preferred. So anyway, I told the wholesaler that, and then I made my way off. And I think I was good. I would have done that anyway, but I then immediately, as soon as I'd finished the booking on CX, got some positive feedback off the shipper. So I'm pretty sure that that me ringing them helped, but whether I would have got that anyway without the call is unknown. Okay, so it was now about 1 o'clock-ish. I was looking for a job, and again I was struggling to win anything, and eventually I got a call at 2:20, and I won a bid going from about Derby way, somewhere near Derby. It's probably sitting in Ashfield, going to Birmingham. Going to hospital in Birmingham. Now, I've done hospitals before, and you know I know they can be very awkward, but the guy on the phone sort of talked me through it and said, you know, collect this item, take it to this place, and it sounded really easy, to be honest. I mean, maybe a bit of coordination, but the shipper was quite clear what he expected. His notes were clear, and I felt quite happy about taking on this job. So the job itself, I was about 23 minutes away from the pickup, and it was 62 miles loaded, and I bid £60 for a small van job. So by the time I got to the pickup, it was close to 3 o'clock, and it was only about an hour and a half to get to Google Maps to get to Birmingham. So I put on there so like 10 to 5 as my expected arrival. I did about half an hour just to be on the safe side, and then I picked up the items from kind of a distributor. Quite a big-ish place. Sometimes when you go there it can be awkward. Sometimes you go to distribution places and they've got procedures that are a bit unique to them, and sometimes they're always signed very well where the dispatch is. This place was okay. I found the dispatch at the other end I went into the entrance, there was goods in at one end, dispatch at the other end. I sort of used my common sense to get to the right area. There's a one-way system. It wasn't massive, but it wasn't very small. I got to the office, it says knock on the window. Did that. Someone came to me, gave paperwork. Really easy. Forklift driver was really friendly. He brought out the pallet. It was 10 bottles of liquid. It wasn't. There wasn't any UN numbers on it. It was in liquid. So I handballed it on. Didn't bother with the pallet because I thought at the other end I'm going to hospital. I don't want to be left with a pallet. And then I made my way towards Birmingham. And at this point in my day, I was really quite cheerful about the whole experience. It's just another great day, doing a really great job. I wasn't necessarily very well busy, very busy, very well paid. I did a lot of waiting around, but I was on the move and I was happy about it. And then I hit traffic, and then my ETA rose from my original ETA on Google Maps was something like 4:15. Yeah, just about an hour and a quarter journey when I first left. Then it became 4:30, and then it was sort of 4:45. This is traffic on the M6 again. I really begin to loathe the M6 around Birmingham. I don't like London. I don't mind Birmingham, but the M6 around Birmingham is quite irritating, and I don't want to pay for the toll to get around it. It's £13 odd. I can't remember how much it is. It's more than I want to pay anyway. So I got kind of stuck in traffic, and then eventually found the hospital okay, and I got there at 4:40. So I thought, that's not too bad. Now I'm going to tell you a bit about the stuff that I had. It was fluid for kidney dialysis. So the hospital I went to was a modern-ish hospital, so it was a big site, but it wasn't a massive hospital. It was reasonably self-contained, but it was more to it than met the eye. And this is where my frustrations began. It was quite dark now and really busy. Traffic was really busy around it. So I got myself on site, and the first place I went to I followed the entrance round. I went to the sort of entrance of the hospital, and there was no obvious signs going to stores. So I came back round, and I found a sign that says renal unit. So I went to that renal unit. Got myself parked up in a loading bay, walked into the renal unit, managed to press a button, managed to get myself in reasonably easily and quickly with my paperwork. I went to the nurse on the desk and said, I've got this liquid, can I deliver it to you? And she didn't have a clue what I was talking about. I don't think she recognised the name of the liquid. I think in hindsight she was probably reasonably junior and wasn't going to take any responsibility for this whatsoever. So I don't blame her for it. I mean, it wasn't her fault. Just I happened to meet the wrong person at that time. So she explained to me very helpfully that I should go to procurement, which was back on the main road, and then a couple of entrances in. So I went back into this busy main road, again stuck in traffic, minutes ticking by, went to the next entrance, which was the second gate on the main road, and then went through and followed the signs for estates. I came to the barrier that she said I should find, pressed the bell and said I've got delivery, and I was let in straight away. And then I had to try and find, but I wasn't told where to go, just the gate opened and I was let in. And there's a delivery point 1 to my right, which is right on the road, and it was all locked up. So I thought, if this is delivery point 1, there must be more delivery points. And I carried on. There was an estate's office. So I went to the estate's office, rang the bell, they let me in. I was trying to find someone, there's no one around, and then a youngest guy came to see me. I said, I've got this fluid to deliver, where do I send it? He looked at my paperwork and said, oh, that's this part of this hospital. And he directed me to another part of the hospital. So I went back out, drove round, couldn't find the names bit that he said, and then I found another delivery point. There was a guide loading, so I went there. I kind of looked desperate and said, can you help me find this place? He described it to me. It's down the road, not the first barrier, second barrier. So I thought, fine, I'm getting there now. I went down the road, missed the first barrier, second barrier, to the place I thought I was meant to go. There wasn't any sign saying procurement, but it kind of felt like from the guy at Estates, so I was in the right place. But there was no button, or there's no, it was a key or a code to get into this barrier. It just didn't feel right. So I looked around me and there's like a sign saying procurement at this house. So I went down this other road and I ended up being, it's a short road, very opposite where I was, and it was basically a combination for the nurses and doctors. It wasn't procurement at all. It was weird. It was dark, there's no one around. It was now getting past 5 o'clock. I rang the shipper quite desperate to think, well, what can I do now? I can't get into the place I'm meant to get to because it's got it needs a code. And as I was talking to him, I was thinking, that doesn't seem like the right place. I looked back at my paperwork and it didn't have a named department or a named person. And what I think had happened is, when I showed the guy in the States, the name of the road that the hospital was on was also named the same name as part of the hospital. I think he must have mistook the name of the road of the address on the paperwork as being the part of the hospital. And so when I looked at it again, I thought, that doesn't really seem like it should go there. This needs to go to stores. So I went back to the estates bit. It's now 5:05. I've managed to find the same guy I found before and another guy. Neither of them, I explained what I had. I even showed that I took a bottle with me and showed the bottle, and they had no idea what to do with it. So they said, let's go to security. So they did kindly, with the younger guy, took me to security. So I felt at least I was getting somewhere. We walked past the procurement office, which was locked. I got to security through many doors, and then the security guard, I explained to him what I was trying to do. He called a number. He was speaking to someone on the phone. He looked confused. 2 security guards came up in this little cubby hole behind me, and they were not aggressive, but their stances and their demeanour was like no nonsense, and it was like I was very passive and very polite, and and they were saying, we can't take this here. They were trying to be helpful, but saying we don't know where it's going to go. It's all closed up now. You can't deliver it today, and we can't really help you. So I just said, fine, thanks for helping, and can you just let me get back to my van, and because I wasn't sure where I was, and I got back to my van very quickly. So really, after all of that, what I worked out, because they told me, was the estate office procurement all closed at 4 o'clock. So all the services that were going to take, could have taken the items I had, were closed, and there was no way I would have got there in time, even without the traffic. It was an hour and a quarter's journey, and I got given the job at something like, I arrived at the job at something like, well, I got given the job about 2:20, but it was about 25 minutes, so let's say 4:40. If I'd had no stops, even picking it up, the delay of picking it up was 10 minutes paperwork, so there's no way I would have got there in time. My estimated time arrival, even without traffic, was 4:04. So I kind of resolved that I'm kind of stuck now. I had one last opportunity to resolve this. Oh yeah, I had rung the shipper. The shipper was really nice, but the problem I was trying to relay to him was that the paperwork I was given from the customer that he was delivering for didn't have any indication on it about where it's meant to go, so it had to obviously just go to stores. There wasn't a department, there wasn't a named person, and so as a delivery driver, you can't then help the person at the other end, tell them where it's going to go. So they're asking who's it for. It just says the hospital, it doesn't say where to go. So it's kind of, in hindsight, I think the customer that had produced the liquid to give to the hospital needed to have better communication about where it was going to go, and also better communication about when the stores closed. If they're gonna, I don't know. I suppose they wouldn't know. Maybe they don't know when the stores closed, but I don't know. It all seems a bit difficult, and in the end, the driver has to deal with it. So I had one last thing, ace up my sleeve, as it were, and this was, I went back to the renal units because it's obvious to me that this was dialysis fluid, and and they would need it. And if it was an emergency, they may need it that night. So I wasn't prepared just to give up on it. So I went back to the unit, and I actually spoke to a different nurse, and I took the bottle with me, and she wasn't prepared, the nurse on reception, to make a decision. But there was another more senior nurse there, and she said she'd ask her. And that senior nurse said she'd accept it. And I was so pleased to her. I said, oh, I could hug you. I won't, because I don't want to invade your personal space, but I could. I was so relieved. I remember her name. I'm going to say her name. Her first name was Daniela. She's a star. So she accepted it. I went and got a trolley, brought the bottles in. She took me into her store cupboard where the other bottles were, and there were about 20 other bottles exactly the same stored in the store cupboard. And so I put these bottles with those, and I took a photo and got her to sign my part. So in the end, we missed out the middle people, which were the stores and the porters. We just got it straight to the people who need the liquid, which I'm quite happy about. But the downside of that was it took me an hour in total. By the time I then got off site with all the traffic, and I parked off the hospital site to ring the shipper to let them know, it was now nearly 5. It was 5:35, so nearly an hour after I arrived, and I felt quite tired. I'm a bit frustrated about the whole thing, but pleased that I was relieved because I got it off my van. I was thinking I was going to have to negotiate some sort of overnight carriage and go back in the morning, which would have been a bit awkward. Anyway, I called the shipper. I asked him for £20 extra for the extra hour, and he was a bit reluctant to do it. But I sensed he was a bit reluctant to do it. But I said, well, whatever you think is fair, I'll leave that with you. And then he did give it to me. I'm not sure if he was reluctant to give me £20 because it was too much, or maybe he thought it was too little. But in the end, I got it quite quickly, and then I finished off the delivery on the CX. So that was £80 in the end. But that was the end of my day. There's no more work around the area. So, and it was quite dark, and I was quite tired, and hungry, you know. So I did look for some jobs, but there was only 2 or 3 jobs that weren't really going anywhere. I was not close to them, so I basically thought I'm going to have to give up. And then I went to the shop, got some food, and I rang my mum, and she lived half an hour from where I'd finished dropping off. So I went to stay with her for the evening last night, which is, she's really, really, really conveniently located for me. They have a spare room, they're in the country, so it's really quiet. It's like tramping, but in a really nice bed in a house. It's tramping in a house, that's what it is. So I see it. So it wasn't a great lucrative day. It was quite hard work in the end. The sort of second 2 hours, the last 2 hours really. But we got there in the end. Sometimes it's like that. So I've been thinking quite a lot about the sort of things I want to share with you, and there's a few things I want to talk about, but I'm not going to do that in today's video. I'll just do my stats for yesterday, which won't be very impressive, I must say. And also, while I'm just getting that up, on the Wednesday, the day before, I was going to work, but I really couldn't find a job, couldn't find a suitable job, so to say. And in the end, by about midday, I thought I'll just give this up and go back home. So I ended up going home and not working all day. It's the first time I've done that. So to be fair, to reflect this week, it's been a bit difficult. Yesterday was about persevering and getting something. The day before I sort of gave up and went home. Obviously if you give up and go home, you're not going to have any chance of winning a job. So for Thursday, my stats are as follows. I only did 171 miles. I only worked for 9.5 hours. I did it fill up with fuel, and my average fuel price now this week is 15.44 pence per mile that I drive. That means I only spent £26.40 yesterday, which is a good thing, I suppose. But I only earned £140. That's £60 going from, I think it was Sleaford to Mansfield, and then £80 in the end. The £20 adds on to £60 that I got for the extra time going from Sutton in Ashfield, I think it was, or Derby Way, going to Birmingham. And that means my net income yesterday after fuel was £114, 114. So there you go. If you are not like the first shipper that I spoke to, but a fair shipper and a professional driver, then I wish you all the very best in this job this year. What comes to mind to me is the following qualities. It's not all the qualities you need, but it's qualities I try to aspire to. I try to work hard. I try to persevere, and I try to show resilience. And I admire those qualities in anybody. This is a job, I think, that requires a certain understanding of customer service and quality, but I'm aware that in this climate, as in January, February, March maybe, as a self-employed courier, you're battling against people whose values are not those. It's not about resilience, hard work and quality. It's about cheap, cheap, cheap. It's about not being honest. It's about doing things just to fulfill your own desire to make money at the expense of others. And I suppose some people might think that's what you should do, but I don't think it is what you should do. Thank you very much for listening or watching this video. Farewell, friends. Actually, shall I make that my... I quite like farewell, friend, as a just before I'm gonna go, my mind's going wild now. So there was a day where I thought yo YouTube would be ironic as a starting point, and the reason why I did that, I thought, I'm an old man, saying yo YouTube would be quite an ironic thing to say, and it kind of stuck as a kind of thing, and it's now what I do. I wonder if farewell, friends should be my thing at the end, just as a kind of calming end to my video. If you have any particular thing to say about that, actually no, I don't really care. It's not you. I think I'll do it anyway. Farewell, friends.